Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Konadra here, and welcome back to Automation, the Car Company Tycoon game. Today we are continuing on in the Vector Automotive Challenge in the year 1984. As we surge into the 80s here, the previous models we have introduced as a company were the new Intrigue and the new Able. The Able is the entry-level sedan slash hatchback car that gives us a nice, entry-level car for people to buy that have a small budget or a small capacity need. The Intrigue is a little bit larger than that and offers some other options in the way of, a 2+2 coupe over to a two-seater truck. It's got some potential there in the small car market as well, but the two are very different. What we are currently lacking, though, is a car that kind of fills the gap in between the small sedan and the large sedan. Some might say it's a midsize. Our previous midsize to large sedan was the Vector Ascent. This car kind of filled more of a luxury role slash large sedan role that we find the buyers today are not necessarily looking for. It has been quite some time since this car debuted, 10 years in fact, so it's time for this car to ascend to its next generation. It's got to find a market for today's audience, and frankly, its current form is not doing that. So we're probably going to start from scratch on this one. We really need to just completely re-envision what this car is intended for. So here in the mid-80s, we've got some diverging styling patterns happening in the sedan market and in overall automotive design. There is this style, which I would refer to as the Americana style. This is what you would typically see in your Chevrolets, your Oldsmobiles, your Fords, all of the normal mid-sized sedan markets. However, the Chrysler Corporation has gone a little bit more of the Asian route with their vehicles and are going with a singular platform, front-wheel drive based, economy based kind of platform, and a look that is less Americana looking and more European slash Asian inspired. That's a bold thing to do. However, their vehicles are selling extremely well and overall are perceived to be more modern than the classic looking than some of the other offerings on the market. So what we have drafted up here is a body and chassis that is only slightly larger than what you would find with the Intrigue platform. However, it has a little bit more of a versatile arrangement, as we can do things such as the 3-door hatch. We can do a 5-door wagon hatch. There is a convertible option, 4-door. There is a coupe, even though the coupe is probably not something we would be interested in. It is only slightly larger than the Intrigue, like I said, but it is wider, it has more headroom, and overall I just think it has more of the usability we need. And considering we are downsizing this car significantly to begin with, I think having options like the Wagon is really important to it to help kind of keep those buyers interested that liked the larger profile of the previous Ascent. We'll start designing this car as a sedan, so as a 4-door version, and trying to figure out what to do from there. Again, I am going to be leaning towards the maybe European slash Asian Japanese influences in style, but we'll see if we can make it look distinctly American at the same time. That's a very difficult thing to do, but I can think of some of other American automotive designers at the moment that might tie it in a little bit more. What I'm saying is chrome. Lots of chrome. As far as the chassis goes, we're obviously going to go monocoque, and we'll do steel. The big choice here is longitudinal versus transverse. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the market, even though it doesn't tie into my personal preference, I think transverse is the way to go with this vehicle. More interior space, easier to get a good tameness out of it. McPherson strut, and let's do semi-trailing arm in the back. Pretty much the simplest option, especially for a front-wheel drive vehicle. And we'll just do regular steel body on that guy as well. Alrighty, so here we have it. A design exercise I would not say this is. However, what we're going to be doing here is trying to exercise our ability to make this car stretch many markets, and be not a pony car, because every car I build is a pony car. So that's one of our main objectives today. No pony car. So now when it comes to engines for this guy, we of course have this 4-cylinder that we've been relying on for some time now. That is overhead cam, 3 valves per cylinder, did pretty well for us in the Able, but now it is 1984 and it is time to bring this motor up to modern spec. That means that we can do things like fuel injection, and things like that should really help bring this to a full high economy, battling with manufacturers like Honda, good engine. So let's just take a look here at what putting at least a single point EFI on there does for us. It should help a whole heck of a lot and not cost very much. This is now a pretty decently researched technology, and we feel pretty confident with that. Multi-point is still a little bit of a far-fetch and might be a little too expensive for us, but I think that single point injection is really going to help us out. We can bring the fuel mix up to a richer mix if necessary. We may bring that back down if we don't need it to help with the economy though. Just a quick, completely not tuned build of this with single point EFI brings us to 77 horsepower, 83 foot-pounds of torque. We have a 12.36 economy. Just for the sake of comparison, let's look at the original Sippers values. It was at 15.56 and 67 horsepower. So we've increased horsepower development. We're not quite getting the economy out of it though, and that is really important. So we want to make this at least better than 15.5%. With my quick tuning, I had made a major blunder and had 3.5-inch exhaust on there. That wasn't doing too good things for this engine. However, now that we fixed that, very good things have happened. 84.1 horsepower, 88 foot-pounds of torque, 16.1% economy. That is better and way better power. So hopefully this thing has the power to move the heavier body of this car. Now 84 horsepower sounds pretty abysmal, but think of it this way. The Chevrolet 2.2 liter engine of the era currently makes 2.2 liter, keep that in mind, this is a 1.5, about 81 horsepower. So with almost a liter less of displacement, we're making similar power. It may cost a little more, but this engine is also extremely reliable and is way more fuel efficient. So I think this is a good start for us. Okay, so let's spec this guy out and see if this engine's going to have enough grunt to keep it going. Top speed looks to be around, 110, 114, depending on the gearing. Yeah, 110. That's plenty good enough. I don't think we need much more than that. We'll need a nice little bit of overdrive there for the purposes of fuel economy. It is helping. Look at that fuel economy number. It's so good in comparison to some of the other stuff we've done. That is great. That is great news for us. Wheel spin going to be an issue with the front wheel drive. However, not really too much of a concern there, is it? I don't think you're going to be romping on this thing with its 5-speed manual box. And if you do, it's front wheel drive. It's not really going to hurt you. In the tire department, we're going for just medium compound. I don't think the hard long lives would do us any good. No, it doesn't seem to help much of anything. Pretty cheap here, steel wheels, 14-inch, I think I said that already, 195 front and rear, maybe a little bit more than necessary, but I think it's good to have a good safe handling car, and 195 wide tires will help with that. In the braking department, looks like we need a little bit more front brake in this setup, probably because of the weight of the car. I don't actually know what the weight of the car is at the moment, so we may need that 2-piston caliper with maybe just a smaller rotor. That looks great. Everything seems to be in order and is very safe and comfortable. Not really anything to look at here. We didn't put any lips on this vehicle, so it's got no aero effects. And it looks like it is staying towards the tame side, even at high-speed steering, so we're not having any weird aero lift. And overall, the suspension tuning seems like it's already in pretty good order. In the interior department, we went with a standard 5-seat setup. I will probably bump the quality of the safety up a little bit, because safety is something that buyers are currently looking for. And that does look like it is improving its stats in family and family sport budget, which are the two we are looking at. The price of sport budget seems to be a little too high. Not getting great scores there, but getting decent scores in family. Wee bit of suspension tuning here. Our normal dampening changes. I may put a little bit of camber in the front of this thing just to give it a little bit less understeer. Let's see. Doesn't seem like that's what the buyers have in mind. One thing I did experiment with is a progressive spring. It seems to be good for it. Right height, it is bottoming out a hair there. Raising it up helps the bottoming out and helps a lot of things, so let's keep it. So it does not weigh nearly as much as I anticipated, 2,023 pounds. This is still a primarily small vehicle. It's just the market is changing. What defines a midsize is changing, so what looks like a midsize vehicle of this era would be a small vehicle of the 70s. Drivability of 38, sportiness at 13.8, still pretty sporty, and that's kind of our company's theme. It's every car we build will have a little bit of sportiness to it. On the test track, it's not a fast vehicle. Not at all. 0 to 60 in 11.1, which is doable. That's good enough to get up on the highway, 55 miles an hour. 10 seconds or so to 55. That's plenty fast enough. One value here I want to look at in detailed stats is the practicality. And I see the cargo volume is a little bit hurting. The amount of doors is hurting, the width of the vehicle is hurting, and the driver height. That's the biggest thing. And that was the choice we made between the Americana style and the more European and Japanese style. It hurts us there, but I think this number here helps us even more, 26.3 miles per gallon. That has got to help in the markets. And if we look at the markets, let's go to the other tab real quick. Actually, crap, we made a pony car again. How does this keep happening? In reality, because there is only one competitive pony car in this market for 1984 in the current scheme of the game. Basically, any car you make is going to be a good pony car. But if we look beyond that, and we look at the categories that are extremely competitive, which is like commuter, 13 cars in commuter, it's still doing pretty good in there. 75% of them, it scores 75% in the affordability of that market. That's really good. And then we have things like family, which is 8 competitors, still scoring 60% there. Family budget, not doing great in the budget department. It is a little bit more expensive than I expected. And it is also still a fun family sport budget minded car. It's just not as affordable for that market, or it's not in the affordability range of that car. That's an important thing to note here. That doesn't always mean that it is too expensive. It could mean that it's too cheap, because a richer demographic might not want to buy a car that people perceive to be a cheap car. So that's why it's important to have your entry-level cars and your higher-up level cars, even if it's the same car. You gotta have different trims for different buyers. One thing I am curious of is how the wagon version of this car would do. Obviously, it fixes the cargo issues. Not a bad-looking wagon either. I'm not a wagon guy at all, to be honest. Never been a wagon fan, but it's not too bad looking. I'd rather drive that in a minivan any day. Let's see how that affects it in the markets, though. I'm quite curious. Obviously, it comes up in some of the comfort areas. Practicality comes up a bunch. Utility comes up a bunch. So I would think it would change the markets quite a bit. And if we look here, we're still a darn good pony car, aren't we? But let's see. Family, I think family did indeed come up quite a bit. The desirability has come up, so that's good. Your car, best competitor. Oh. So it turns out when I was looking at the last car, I was looking at the wrong column. This is the best competitor stats. This is my stats. Still, though, that gives me an even better idea. Now, this is a car with much less in the way of competitors. If we look at its top scoring ones, Sport Budget sure has a lot of them, and it is doing better than those as far as the affordability goes, but it's not as desirable. Not by a long shot. And if we look at things like commuter, it is actually more desirable and more affordable. That is good to know. That is very good to know. That means that this car has something that it is the best at. And if you look at all of these at the top here, these are things that it is considered to be the best at in its individual little market here. And family budget, city, commuter, those are all things that we had in mind for this car. Now that is with no markup on either of these, and of course there's going to be a markup, but it doesn't really change any of those. Didn't hurt things too badly. I went ahead and went back to the base model just so we can compare there now that I see what I'm doing. And we can see that I was talking about like commuter with 13 competitors. A 1200 score on desirability versus a 1000, and it is more affordable or similarly affordable in that field. So that's a good thing. That means it's going to compete very well in this heavily competitive market. There's also probably a huge demographic of people that want commuter vehicles and family vehicles. So it's important to have good values in that kind of field. More really good things that this will tell you is the budget of that demographic. So in commuter, they have a $14,000 budget. Our car only costs $8,400. That means that there's wiggle room in there for nicer models if we can still keep it within the same desirability range. But overall, that's still a good number to know, as, that means that it's affordable and desirable. That's good. That's what you want. So like I just mentioned, a higher market might be something we need to go for with this vehicle as well. So let's see what we can do with a sport touring option for it. That's going to mean a bigger engine, better options, and just a more overall kind of luxury appearance to the car. Maybe not in its visual appearance, but just like things you can put in a brochure that make buyers more interested. So without a doubt, the engine is the first thing we need to look at. We do have a V6 floating around, and that V6 I think will fit quite nicely. We definitely don't need the high-strung version of it though. We can peel that turbo off of this guy, make it NA, and still see if we can get like 200 horsepower out of it. And I think that will be a good combo for this front-wheel drive based vehicle. Actually, you know what might be really cool, and I've already started tinkering on this, is making a lower pressure turbo setup for this engine. Something that's a little bit more, within reason for buyers. That might be something that's pretty crazy and cool. It does seem to fit. And if I can get the economy rating somewhat decent, it's already up to 10%, I might try to make this work. And that might be pretty cool for this car. Around 200 horsepower is what we want. We don't want to be blowing the front tires off of this thing all the time and scaring all our buyers. But, having that prestige of having the power on tap is something pretty important to me. There we go, 202 horsepower, 181 foot-pounds of torque. That's not too bad, and this is a relatively normal engine. There's no crazy bottom end, cast iron crank, cast conrods, hypertensive cast pistons. That's all very doable. I can probably actually reduce the quality of these parts, not put too terribly much, engineering into these because they're doing very well. There's very little in the way of pressure on the bottom end of this car, or engine. Compression-wise, 8.6, cam profile is 62, which is a little high for a street vehicle, but it's doable. And then the turbo setup is small turbos, 8 psi of pressure, an air-to-air medium-sized intercooler, just enough to keep it reliable, and that turbo comes on nice and smoothly. It doesn't overdo anything. It's not killing the economy by shoving a bunch of fuel into it. And then in the fueling department, we are running multi-point EFI. Is expensive. Just a single throttle body on this guy. Performance intake on there. It's still a performance engine in nature. Looks like we can indeed lean this guy out some more though. Get some more economy out of it. And we're still making 201 horsepower. This would be pretty unheard of for the era, to be honest. And let's see, exhaust-wise, everything looks good there. Sizing is actually a little bit too big, so we can reduce that size. Lose a little weight, lose a little money. So the economy ends up being at 12.65. I don't think that's any worse than what a 200 horsepower naturally aspirated engine of the era is going to be at. Maybe a little bit worse, to be honest. But is that engine as cool? Probably not. You see, when Mom pulls out of the school parking lot and people hear that, they're going to be really impressed. That's what makes that twin turbo setup just so worth it. Currently, failure, failure, failure. We need more cooling. Hopefully this thing has enough grills on it. Oh, it's got plenty of grill on it. There we go. Now we can have some actual stats on it. These markets are probably going to be way wrong. We'll have to fix that. That's fine. And let's see, gearing wise, we're going to need more of it. Quite a bit more of it. This thing's mighty quick. Wow. That's a lot better miles per gallon than I was expecting. 19.1 as of right now. That's, yeah, like I said, that's a lot better. One thing I will probably need to do is a geared LSD on there. Never mind, doesn't help at all. Just kidding. It helps a little, but not enough to warrant the cost. It's important to remember with a car like this that you can make a car with some power not necessarily be a sports car. That's the trap I fall into all the time, where I'm like, okay, well, now we have twin turbos on this thing. It's making 200 horsepower. It only weighs 2,200 pounds. Darn it, we need some sports car compounds on there. We need, 225 width tires. That's not really necessary. Sure, maybe we'll go up to a 15, and maybe we'll put, maybe we won't put 190 or 205s on there because they won't seem to fit. The 195 is actually probably fine. It's really not that much power, nor do we need to have a sub 7-minute time on the Nürburgring. Oh, it looks good with some decent wheels on there too. I like it. Those brakes are starting to get a little bit overworked at this point, and the fade is pretty real. So I'm going to change the fronts to Vena discs, and that's going to help a ton. And we will just give it a little bit of a rotor size increase as well. Now this is a premium car for a premium market. We'll see how that works out for us, but we're going to put a premium interior in it with good quality. We're going to put a cassette player in it. Ooh, cassette player. It's going to work more than 6 times. Power steering, standard safety, but with the good quality on that, we're in pretty good shape there. Suspension-wise, we may need more dampening up front, just a little bit. And other than that, I think we're pretty good. We'll stay with the progressive springs for the comfort aspect of it. We're still bottoming out just a hair. We will fix that for the comfort aspect of it. We want it to be very comfortable. 2,300 pounds. It's a little heavier than I expected, but 18.6 miles per gallon in a vehicle that gets 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds and can tote around the whole family. That, I think, is a extremely good magazine-winning car. That's what we've produced here. This is a car that gets people into the dealership because magazines will be featuring this as like the trend-setting car. Not everybody's going to be able to afford it, though. If we look at the markets, it's a muscle pony sport budget car in the markets. That's not probably going to be the case. It doesn't look nearly as desirable as most of the muscle cars, and it is way more affordable than those, so I guess that's a good option. But it does well in sport budget, which is exactly kind of the area I thought it would do well in. It does well in family sport as well. What I really kind of wanted it to do well in is family sport premium, but look at the amount of money that market has to spend. $32,000. This car is currently costing $13,000. For it to score 1,200 in desirability in a field of the best car having 1,400, having a affordability of 89%, I think this is still going to be a very good performing car in its market. Well, there you go. There is 3 versions of the Ascent. In the end, we would need even more versions of this, but maybe I'll do those behind the scenes as a full company workout. But for today, I think that will do it for the episode. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.